Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Sunday night recap show of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Harris. With me is Mike Tagliere. You can find us on Twitter at Dan Harris80 and at Mike Tagliere NFL. Tags, how you doing?
I'm good. I mean, it wasn't a murderous row on the football field today, so that's always good. I hate it when we have to recap like 20 different injuries, and that's kind of how it felt like coming into this week. So I'm just happy we're walking out of this week relatively healthy.
Yeah, so this is you guys who are watching on YouTube, because we stream this live, youtube.com/fantasypros. You will get the benefit of when there are multiple games still going on when Tags and I start doing this, because you're going to see us react to things. If Tag's got a big thing in DFS or something like that, one of his DFS players goes crazy or somebody who's really high on, there's usually a woohoo or something like that that comes out spontaneously. So just be ready for that, as we still have 3 games just finishing up. As we do, we will still recap them. Of course, we've got a lot to get to on our Sunday night recap show, as we always do. But first, let me remind you that we have 4 days, I think 3 or 4 days until the end. However many days are left in September, that's when our monster giveaway ends. Not a review count, closing at the end of September at 11:59 on September 30th, right? That's 30 days. How's September? Yeah, that's right. Okay, 30 days. On the 30th of September, 11:59 p.m., that's when the contest closes. Reminder, it's huge. A signed Clyde Edwards-Helaire helmet from the Chiefs, a $200 gift card from Pristine Auction, a $200 gift card to Porter Road Butcher, a package of fantasy football goods for your league's champion and your last place loser from Trophy Smack, and a 1-month subscription to Fubo TV. As a reminder, if you are the winner and you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/fantasypros, you get an extra $100 credit to Pristine Auction. That's $300 in total credit, plus a signed Clyde Edwards-Helaire helmet. To enter, just go to fantasypros.com/contest. It's filling out the form there. It's leaving an honest review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, and then screenshotting it and using the form on fantasypros.com/contest to send it in. Just something honest here. We have more than 7,400 reviews on Apple Podcasts for this podcast. We have over 72,000 YouTube subscribers. That means a ton to us. We have made an effort to do more this year, more podcasts, more videos, more live streams. When you guys take the time to leave us a review or to subscribe to our YouTube channel, it really means a lot to all of us here. So thanks a lot for everything. If you haven't yet left a review and or subscribe to the YouTube channel, go ahead and do it now, and then enter the contest. You might win a monster giveaway. And then remember, fantasypros.com/contest is where you're going to be able to submit the review. All right, Tags. On our first time, I did Real or No Real. Nobody apparently used to watch Deal or No Deal, and nobody got that.
Wow.
So I know, it's terrible. I like looking at some player performances, discussing whether or not we can trust them. But we're going to change this segment, since nobody liked the name, to Tags. Here are players that did well today. Tell me if you think we can trust their performances going forward. Alternatively, let me know if you do not think we can trust the performances going forward. Okay?
Got it.
All right. And we're going to do a rookie wide receiver edition. Okay? Because we had some real big performances from some rookie wide receivers. Let's start with Justin Jefferson. 9 targets, 7 catches, 175 yards, and a touchdown. Can we trust Justin Jefferson? Can we get him into our starting lineups? Or at least, I'm sure he's available on a lot of leagues. Should he be added everywhere or what?
I believe he could be a bench ad. I don't think that he's someone that you're going to want to rely on in your starting lineup. The Vikings are still a run-first team. They want to be a run-first team. Adam Thielen isn't going to end up with like 5 targets every single game. But I do want to say that over the course of his career, Kirk Cousins has really, he propped up slot wide receivers. And knowing that Adam Thielen isn't playing in the slot, it's going to hurt his production. He's been better in the slot. So Justin Jefferson playing the slot role, it does lend credit to his performance. He was someone that missed a lot of training camp, considering he was on the COVID list. So yeah, he should be added for sure. With bye weeks coming up, in week 5, that's when they begin. That's when you can start looking at Justin Jefferson if the Vikings are going to be in a situation where they're going to be passing a little bit more than a game where they're favorited, because if they're favorited in a game, they're not going to throw the ball a whole lot.
I mean, this game was close though. I mean, they were only, it was close throughout, and it was projected, the Titans were favored by 2.5 points. I think the biggest thing that you take away is that the Vikings offense looked really good, and it looked really good when Jefferson was involved. So he certainly is someone that you add off your waiver wire, but he's not necessarily someone who you can start. I completely agree there. We talk about it all the time. I mean, there's a million wide receivers that are sort of jammed up in that wide receiver 3 range, but he certainly is someone to add. How about Brandon Ayuk? 8 targets, 5 catches, and 70 yards through the air. 3 carries for 31 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Is Brandon Ayuk somebody who A, should be added, B, if so, could find his way into your starting lineup?
Yeah, by default, he's the number one wide receiver there in San Francisco. And, we heard whispers about Deebo Samuel. They're expecting him back in week 5. And I think that's a bunch of crap. I don't think that you can judge that. If he's not going to be ready for week 4, how are you going to say that he's going to be ready for week 5? You don't know that. And Deebo Samuel, if you have him, if you've been holding him on your roster, I suggest using these whispers, these reports that he's going to come back in week 5, trade him away, get rid of it. It's going to be a headache with his foot injury. So I think Brandon Ayuk is someone clearly with Nick Mullins. There's a connection there. Proved to be competent today, even if it was against the Giants. So yeah, Brandon Ayuk, I would say, has more fantasy relevance than Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think we all ranked him higher coming into this week because you knew he could be involved. Again, basically because there are just few other options in that passing game. And it is good. I like when when coaches do their best to get receivers involved in the running game, just to get them involved in the game plan in some way. And you could see how his speed paid off. Last one, T. Higgins here, 9 targets, 5 catches, 40 yards, and 2 touchdowns against the Bucs. Tell me what you think about T. Higgins going forward.
Well, against the Eagles, it was always going to be a weird matchup for AJ Green against Darius Slay. That's a tough matchup, one of the better cornerbacks in the league. And then you had Tyler Boyd in the slot against Nickel Roby-Coleman, who is one of the better slot cornerbacks. I know Tyler Boyd had a good game, but I was actually looking at T. Higgins as someone who's had some sleeper appeal this week, and it didn't happen until game day because him and John Ross were splitting snaps last week. And then we find out this morning that John Ross was actually scratched, and he was a healthy scratch, which meant that T. Higgins was going to play that number 3 wide receiver role, had the best matchup on the field. Now, I don't think you could have trusted him in lineups. There was no way you could have done that, but stashing him, knowing that they're kind of moving on from John Ross, is something you should have done. Yates actually mentioned something about that on Twitter this morning. So T. Higgins definitely should be rostered, but I still believe that at best he's the third or fourth option in this pass attack. So Joe Burrow's looking better and better. I mean, a good performance today. Unfortunately, that offensive line is still terrible.
Yeah.
They need to protect him a lot more, but Higgins should be rostered. I can't put him over Ayuk. I think that T. Higgins and Justin Jefferson belong in a similar conversation. I think Jefferson has a clearer path to targets, but at the same time, this Bengals team is going to be throwing the ball an awful lot.
Yeah, they are. We're going to talk about that offensive line when we get to Mixon and the game. But for now, let's go to my favorite segment anyway, which is What's Your Problem, Man? We got Double Browns edition going on right now. Let's start with Odell Beckham Jr. You have him 10 tags. This is somebody
no, I don't.
You don't anymore?
No, I don't anymore.
Okay.
I went way down on him. I actually moved him down to 18 among wide receivers.
You're 10 spots too high. I'm just going to throw that out there for you right now.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, I'm not going to argue with you on that. Like I was going through it and I was like, I kept moving him down. And I got to the point where I'm like, oh boy, this is ugly. It's ugly.
Yeah, we talked about this before the season started, and I had Beckham. I was fading him a lot coming in. I was terrified because he's an incredible talent. The targets are not going to be there. They're just not. He got 6 targets again today. He got 6 targets last time, and he caught a touchdown last time. But it's just not going to. This is not the. He admitted it, right? He came out before this game and was like, "Yeah, it's not going to be a huge season for me," and he's right. So yeah, I think I had him 27th coming in tags, and he's not moving down or anything for me because this is basically what I would have expected. He'll have a couple of boom games, but I just don't see it coming. So okay, you already moved him down. You ruined my What's Your Problem, man. How about Kareem Hunt tags? You had him borderline RB2, I believe, in your half PPR rankings. Have you moved him up after this game? 16 for 46 on the ground. 2 catches, 18 yards, and touchdown. Not a huge day, but he finds the end zone again. Are you moving him up, or are you comfortable with him as a low-end RB2 in half PPR leagues?
I moved him up to RB20. I don't think that he's someone that is like an every week stud. I think game script is going to depend a lot in terms of his role and what they're going to get. If they run into a team that can consistently move the ball and eat up the clock against them, it's going to be a lot more Nick Chubb than it is Kareem Hunt. Fortunately, they've been able to run a lot of plays the last couple weeks. Washington is just, they're terrible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think I had Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt both ranked as top 18 running backs this week. So I expected this performance out of him. So Nick Chubb's running fantastic. So they're not going to take the ball out of his hands on early downs. If a game is really close, they're going to mix in Kareem Hunt. So he's right there around Mark Ingram, where it's like a guy, that he's never going to get 20 touches a game. That's just not who they are, but they're very efficient with the, let's call it, 12 to 15 touches that they do get per game. So that's the range I kind of view him in.
Yeah, I'm a little higher on him because I do think, I mean, you look at their schedule, they faced the Ravens in the first week. He's still got involved. They had the Bengals, the Washington football team, Dallas, Indy, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Las Vegas. It's just not, it's something where I think they're going to be able to stick to what they want to do, which is lean heavily on both running backs. And this is the rare situation where you've got 2 guys. And yeah, Chubb is the main guy, but I do think that Hunt, especially with how much he factors into the passing game, is going to be involved in each and every game. So for me, again, you get to that point, the Mark Ingrams, I don't know, 10 touches a game, 12 touches a game. Hunt's going to be a little more than that, and he's going to be involved in the passing game. So I'm a little higher than that. I have him 15th, and I think I'm probably keeping him right there. So not a game that moves the needle much for me, but I think you were probably too low coming in. Sounds like you agreed. You ruined my what's your problem, man. So let's get into the games. Patriots 36, Raiders 20. As we all said coming into this week and at the beginning of the season, go after your Patriots running backs. Sony Michel and Rex Burkhead combined. Michel 8 for 117 on the ground, plus 2 for 23 through the air. Rex Burkhead 6 for 49 and 2 touchdowns on the ground, plus 10 targets, 7 catches, 49 yards, and a touchdown through the air. Damien Harris should be back soon. Are you interested in any Patriots running back going forward?
I mean, not really. So there are going to be people out there that will be willing to buy Rex Burkhead. I promise you. And the reason I say that is because there were people willing to spend all their fab budget on Malcolm Brown. There were people willing to spend all their fab budget on Deion Lewis. They're looking for that running back. There are so many injuries. They're just looking for that guy. And they feel like maybe Rex Burkhead's the guy. James White was obviously scratched from this game for personal reasons, dealing with some tragedy in his family. So Burkhead kind of walked into that role, and it was weird to see him involved that much. I actually panic started Rex Burkhead in 2 leagues of mine, because with all these injuries adding up, I'm in some 14 team leagues where we start 3 wide receivers, 2 flex, 2 run, so it's really deep. And I had to start Burkhead in a couple places. I was hoping that he'd get like 5-6 targets, maybe a couple carries. I just wanted some sort of floor from him. This is not going to happen moving forward. Right. I don't, there's no other way to put it. Sell Rex Burkhead if you can find someone in your league. Maybe you put him in as a throw in, like you throw in another player and him together and say, hey, I'll ship him off for an upgrade. But I'm not buying it.
You were not alone, by the way, in starting him this week, because, we do the start sit. I do mine from 10 to 11 on Instagram in the morning. You do yours on YouTube from 11 to 12. I got a ton of questions about Rex Burkhead this week. And I was like, oh, is this a thing? Or are we all starting Rex Burkhead this week? But I guess there were a lot of people interested in good
injuries, man. Injuries, they wrecked a lot of fantasy leagues.
No, good for you. I mean, it paid off, but I agree with you. It's just these days are going to happen once in a while, but it's not something to target. Passing, and meanwhile, the Patriots play pretty conservatively. They have the game in hand for the most part. So nobody really does anything in the passing game. Newton throws the 1 touchdown to Burkhead. Any takeaways here from anybody? I mean, it's a down game for Newton, but
yeah, he did not look good today. This was like the passer that we saw in Carolina, the guy that was up and down in terms of his accuracy. There were a few balls that I saw just sail on him, a few ones that he threw behind his receivers, which is the complete opposite of what happened to him when he played against Russell Wilson last week. So I don't want to take too much away from Cam. It was a good matchup and one that I expected him to do better in, but we're all entitled to a bad week here and there.
Yeah, it's certainly disappointing for Cam, but I personally am not taking anything from this game. It was just a weird game. They had it for the most part. They didn't seem that focused, which, might have been because I think everybody in the world expected them to win, themselves included. So who knows? But either way, I'm not worried about Cam at all. To the Raiders, no rugs here. Short week. We knew the Patriots were going to do what they do, which is try to take away your best weapon. That's Darren Waller. 4 targets, 2 catches, 9 yards. I assume you have no concerns with Darren Waller here, right?
No worries with him. I talked about it in the live stream this morning, saying I was worried about Waller, and that it's not like you can sit him, right? But he's someone that, like, DFS, like Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller, those are the guys that you think about in DFS. And season long, you start them every week, you deal with the ups and downs.
Yeah. Josh Jacobs, I mean, he lost the fumble, but really better, I think, than I expected him to do in this game on a short week where he was questionable coming in. 16 for 71 on the ground, plus 4 targets, 3 catches, and 12 yards through the air. I'm encouraged, Tags, by all this usage in the passing game. I know he loses out to Jalen Richard towards the end, but he's got 13 targets, 10 catches. I mean, are you, like me, encouraged with how much they're involving him in the passing game? Even if it doesn't result in huge yardage, it's still nice to see, especially in half or full PPR formats.
I am, but I still have no idea why Devontae Booker's getting snaps. Jalen Richard, when they re-signed him, if they kept everybody on the roster that they used to have, I think Josh Jacobs was going to be in line for the role that I thought, where it was like, they had him on the roster last year. Why didn't they use him in this way? Right. And then they get to, like, they start cutting people and start losing to people injury, trading away Lynn Bowden. And it's like, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, Josh Jacobs, I could see the targets. And after week 1, it was like career high in targets. Yes. And then all of a sudden it's like 3 and 4 targets the last 2 weeks. So it's not like massive involvement. It's kind of like a Joe Mixon type thing on a football team that they don't really score a whole lot of points. They use their tight ends a lot in the goal line situations. But I mean, I like Jacobs. I have him as a top 10 running back for the rest of the season. I just don't think that there's ever a chance he's going to finish as a top 3 running back with how little they're using him in the passing game.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I think that unbridled optimism that everybody had coming in when he was like, I'm going to catch 60 passes.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But he is great and he is top 10. I agree with you there. Let's go on to Titans 31, Vikings 30. You weren't worried about Derrick Henry, but he did go 26 for 119 and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Ryan Tannehill, 321 yards, but no touchdowns. Khalif Raymond leads the way, catches all 3 of his targets for over 100 yards. Corey Davis, 6 targets, 5 catches, and 69 yards. Jonnu Smith, 8 targets, 5 catches, 61 yards. There was a report earlier this morning, Tags, that sounded like A.J. Brown may be out for a while. Are you comfortable starting Corey Davis as a wide receiver 3, as we've all kind of been recommending in these matchups with Brown out?
Yes and no. I mean, I wanted to like Corey Davis, the player, and I still think that he is talented, but it's clear that he's never going to get the targets that we want him to get, because he's a guy, when he gets those 8 targets in a game, he's going to produce with them. But 6 targets in a game, Ryan Tannehill threw the ball 37 times without A.J. Brown. It's a little worrisome. Yep. He's more of like that fringe wide receiver 3, where it's like, if you have no other options, or if you're dealing with injuries, like you needed a last minute replacement for Devontae Adams or Michael Thomas or Julio Jones, whatever. He's like that fringe wide receiver 3 play while A.J. Brown is out. I don't think I'm ever going to rank him as a top 30 wide receiver, just because there's just no predictability to his game right now. But again, he should give you a decent floor, that 5-6 target floor,
right,
in a pinch.
Yeah, no, that's about how I feel about him. I mean, you don't always need the ceiling necessarily when you're in that range, and he does have a fairly high floor without Brown, but it's still just been disappointing given the volume that Tannehill has given out. On the other side, we talked about Jefferson already. That's the main takeaway. Dalvin Cook, monstrous game, 22 for 181 and a touchdown, plus 2 catches for 18 yards through the air. Kirk Cousins does throw the 3 touchdown passes, 1 to Adam Thielen, 1 to Kyle Rudolph, but Thielen's kind of quiet here again, just 5 targets, 3 catches, 29 yards. Are you worried at all about Adam Thielen?
I'm not necessarily worried about him. I wish that there were more targets to him. Obviously, and the touchdown that he got was on a broken play.
Right.
Kirk Cousins scrambled, worked his way to the sideline, and Adam Thielen came along with him. And that seems like when those two work the best, because Adam Thielen just isn't athletic enough to win on the perimeter consistent. And so it's like these two are on the same page. They have that connection, but this team they don't want to throw the ball a whole lot. They want to run the ball. And you look at the matchup they have next week. They're going to Houston. Mm-hmm. That game, I mean, it's hard to say this Vikings defense can stop anybody at this moment. Honestly, this defense looks terrible. They never give up 31 points at home, but clearly it's just a team that's struggling right now. But I'm a little worried. I'm no longer going to view him as a low end wide receiver 1 anymore.
That's where I'm basically asking. You had him 8th coming in. Is he out of the wide receiver 1 range now?
Yeah, I'm moving him down. Like I would rather own Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, those guys. Yep. Maybe even Robert Woods, just because I think their roles are safer. Where Thielen, I hate to move him down too much because I don't want to overreact. It's the same thing with Kirk Cousins, right? I wrote a streaming article that came out on Saturday, and it's like I look at the week ahead and I say, grab these guys now because other people are going to want to stream them. And I said, Cousins is going to play against Houston. Don't overthink like, oh, he had a terrible game against the Colts, so he sucks now. That's not the way you should look at Cousins. He's been pretty consistent throughout his career. He had a bad game, and now it's like now they're going to be going against Houston, a team that could put some points on the board. Their defense is really weak. So I feel like Cousins is a guy that I gained a little confidence in here because he has another weapon because Justin Jefferson obviously showed that he can get it done.
Right. That is something that does make me a little more optimistic on Jefferson's future, that he might develop into a guy who you might be able to start at some point. Again, not yet, but because of how much better the offense looked today. And the Titans secondary is nothing to write home about, especially not right now. But it is something where, given how good they looked, I wonder if they say, you know what, we really have to open it up more. We have to get him more involved. Let's go to
So I'm watching the game. This is like happening right now. So I know some people are watching the live stream. Oh, a Cowboys player just tackled Chris Carson. And as he brought him down, he was holding onto his leg, which is good tackling. But then when he rolled over, he kept his leg tight under grips, twisted his knee. It did not look good. Carson's laying on the ground with everyone surrounding him right now. So that's not good.
No, I legitimately just turned it off because I was like, it's the last game left. There's 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that tomorrow on the waiver wire show then. But for now, let's get into 49ers 36, Giants 9. Can we just agree that I was process and you were results with the 49ers running back?
I have no idea what you're talking about. All I know is that Jeff Wilson outscored McKinnon, and that's what I said. What I said was going to happen.
Gotcha.
But Dan, you're correct. Yes.
So go ahead, Tags.
McKinnon was the one who started this game. He had more of the touches over the entire first half. It was him, and I was looking at it, and it was like I think it was like 5 carries for 4 yards or something like that for Jeff Wilson. Wasn't using the passing game in the first half, and it was like, oh crap, I gotta concede.
You were getting ready. You were getting ready for what this show was going to be. But
I certainly was. But then I was like, hey, Jeff Wilson worked out.
He did.
And now Jerick McKinnon's hurting. I don't know how severe his injury is, but if he misses time, this is clearly Jeff Wilson's backfield. I mean, I'm happy about it because I got Jeff Wilson in a lot of leagues because nobody seemed to want him.
Right. No, I mean, look, they both, if you picked either one of them up and you started either one, you are happy.
Yeah,
certainly
for sure.
With your fantasy day. I mean, Wilson finds the end zone twice, McKinnon once, but they both looked, I mean, Wilson didn't look that good on the ground, 12 for 15, but I mean, 3 catches for 54 yards and a touchdown. That's great. And McKinnon looked great when he was in. Mostert may be back. It's a mild, MCL sprain. So we'll have to see. But let me ask you something, Tags. Let's assume they're both healthy. Let's assume McKinnon is okay. Let's assume Wilson. If Mostert is out next week against the Eagles, would you start either one of them or both of them, or how would you play this?
The Eagles is not a great matchup. Honestly, I mean, if McKinnon's okay, I'd probably choose him over Wilson. But he's not going to be anything more than an RB3 for me.
Yep. All right. For the Giants, just disgusting is the best way I can put it. The lead running back was Devonta Freeman with 5 carries for 10 yards. And then, I mean, the lead running back, the lead rusher was Daniel Jones. Then Wayne Gallman, 4 for 7. Dion Lewis, 1 carry. Your leading receiver is Darius Slayton, 3 catches for 53 yards. The Rams next. I guess going forward, Tags, start or sit anyone on the Giants. Who are you starting on the Giants?
I mean, Darius Slayton probably should be started, considering he's going to see 7-8 targets per game with Sterling Shepard out. Yep. But Daniel Jones, I said it on the live stream today. I said that I get a lot of Mitch Trubisky vibes from him. It's like he's very on or he's off. And this matchup against a banged up 49ers team, I figured that there could be at least a competent performance in this. I didn't expect a big game out of him or anything, but this wasn't good at all. So it kind of drags down my confidence in Darius Slayton, but I still think Slayton is someone that if you can go out there and acquire him in a trade, I might try and do it. The Rams is not a great matchup, but it's a team that we should expect a negative game script for them, maybe a lot more pass attempts. And again, if you have a receiver getting 8 targets per game, most of the time he's going to be startable in fantasy.
Can you drop Evan Ingram?
Probably. He had a bad game too.
He had a bad game.
Yeah,
yes.
He did.
He played poorly. You can drop him.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think there's a reason that this Giants, the new regime that came in, they wanted to get rid of him. We heard whispers that in the offseason that they wanted to trade him away, and it just never happened. But I think we're starting to see the reason that they wanted to move on from him.
Yeah. Now you have other injuries you have Dallas Goedert, who sounds like he's going to miss some time as well. Yeah. So you don't have to drop him. Don't spite drop anyone ever. But if you have to move on, if you have somebody else here streaming, I think you're fine to do so. Let's go to the Steelers 28, Texans 21. For most people, everybody's been excited about Deontay Johnson. He leaves early in this one with a concussion. Hopefully he'll be okay for next week. Passing game pretty quiet here. Eric Ebron and Juju Smith-Schuster both find the end zone, but just 52 and 43 yards respectively. James Washington does see 7 targets here, Tags, 5 catches for 36 yards. If Deontay Johnson is out, is James Washington somebody who you think fantasy managers can pick up?
I don't think so. I think Chase Claypool and him, those guys have been splitting snaps through much of the first couple of weeks. And it seems like James Washington is slightly ahead on that depth chart. He has played more snaps, run a couple more routes, but Chase Claypool is a rookie. And we had to think about it. The first 4 games is basically like these rookies. It's like their preseason. These guys are getting into game shape. They're learning the speed of the NFL. Chase Claypool, he looked better than I thought he would, honestly, in the NFL. I didn't like Chase Claypool coming out of college, but he looks solid. He looks slimmer than I thought I remembered him in college. But I don't think you want to trust either of them. I still think they're going to split it once Deontay Johnson's back. And knowing that the concussion obviously took place on a Sunday, he's got all week to get through the protocol. I would expect he's going to be back out there. But if anything, though, Deontay Johnson's someone that I would probably go out and try and trade for right now. I had a lot of questions on the live stream this morning about Deontay Johnson and should I start him? I'm like, guys, why are we talking about should you start Deontay Johnson? He was always a start, right? A guy that's getting a 31.5% target share. The concussion, now that those same owners that were worried about him, get a 0 performance, and now they're just like, ugh, I don't want to have to deal with this headache. And they might trade him away for cheaper than he should be.
Where do you value him out of curiosity, Tex? Because you and I were right in line. I think I had him 26th. You had him 28th. I mean, that's like high-end wide receiver 3 territory. Is that where you'd value him in a trade?
That's where I'm keeping him at right now. I'm not moving him.
Yeah, I agree. James Conner, big game, 149 total yards and a score. He is back. Anthony McFarland does get involved here. Tags, they look pretty good. 6 carries for 42 yards on the ground, 1 catch for 7 yards. Anything else worth talking about here with Pittsburgh? I mean, I don't know if McFarland is worth talking about or if you just want to move on to Texans.
Yeah, I don't know where to go with this backfield, honestly, behind James Conner. I don't know if you have to carry Benny Snell because McFarland was inactive in week 1. And it's like, we didn't see any role in week 2. And now all of a sudden he's getting just as many touches as Benny Snell. He's a better pass catcher. They have Jalen Samuels active. So it's like there's 3 running backs competing behind James Conner, who's clearly the lead guy here. But I don't know if you need to carry any of them on your roster right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Connor's the guy. And then if he goes down, you figure out what you're dealing with later. On the other side, Deshaun Watson, tough matchup, does throw for 2 touchdowns, passes 1 to Randall Cobb, catches all 4 of his targets for 95 yards and a touchdown. 1 to Will Fuller. Good to see him get back. 5 targets, 4 catches, 54 yards and a touchdown. David Johnson generally held in check, but he does find the end zone. I'm not sure there's much to take away here. Tags, very tough defense. Houston has had a just terrible opening schedule. So I'm not really sure if there are any takeaways here on the Houston side, but you let me know if you think differently.
No, Will Fuller is like, DK Metcalf catches a long touchdown to win the game, I think.
Oh, man, well, I'm missing so much right now because I'm trying to focus on my job. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tex.
Yeah, but Will Fuller, it was good to see him back. Obviously scoring a touchdown. It was funny because on the broadcast, I had the volume up on that one. And he was saying that Will Fuller is the only wide receiver that could have caught that ball. I'm like, it was a jump ball. And you're telling me Will Fuller's the only, it was comical, but the idea is that Will Fuller is who we thought he was. He's a wide receiver 3 that you put in your lineup and you understand that he could wreck a week for you. He legitimately can leave you with a donut, but he can also help you win a week, like he did in week 1. Obviously this week he didn't hurt your fantasy team. So you kind of plug him in there unless he's like not playing. You kind of have to play Will Fuller.
I feel like Will Fuller is always my hardest rank of the week. If there was one guy, who do you struggle with to rank? It's always Will Fuller because I could legitimately rank him within a range of 20 spots at whatever point. Because I'm like, I don't know. All right, let's go on to like a pretty exciting game you may have been watching out of the corner of your eye. Bears 30, Falcons 26. Dan Quinn and Adam Gase both desperately trying to win the race to be fired first. Falcons blow another giant 4th quarter lead because you cannot stop Nick Foles in really 3 touchdowns, 1 to Allen Robinson, almost 2. You thought it was 2. I clearly thought it was 1. 1 to Jimmy Graham, who has 2 overall, and 1 to Anthony Miller. Is this just arrows up? I mean, for Nick Foles is the starter going forward, right? Like, no doubt about it.
Could be. I'm unwilling to say that it's a lock. Honestly, if you were to watch that entire game like I did, you would see that Foles, that could have easily been 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions. There were a lot of questionable passes. He stared down his leads the entire time. I legitimately was just like disgusted at that game. And then the Bears come back and win. And I'm like, why is this team 3-0? I don't get it. I really don't. The Bears are not a 3-0 team as far as I'm concerned. I know it says that on paper, but they don't look like a 3-0 team. Tariq Cohen, torn ACL, likely out for the year. It seems they're going to confirm that, but most of the time that's correct.
They basically have said it already.
But on top of that, it's like they had a 3-way timeshare with him, Cordarrelle Patterson. I don't know what's happening there. Matt Nagy just tries to be too cute sometimes, where the Bears should have went in there and run the ball. Anthony Miller, I know he walks away with a touchdown, but again,
my question is that's really the guy I want to ask you about, because let's assume Nick Foles starts next week, because I always thought this when they named Trubisky the starter, it was just because you couldn't name Foles the starter and then go back to Trubisky. And I don't think you can pull Trubisky from a game. However, he actually played to see Nick Foles come back and win that game and then be like, sorry guys, we're going back to Trubisky now. We liked Anthony Miller a lot. And he fit Foles' style, I felt like, a little more. Foles likes the slot receiver. Do we think the arrow is pointing up for Anthony Miller, who basically bookends his goose egg of a game with 2 really impressive games. How about Anthony Miller going forward? If Foles is the starter, are you moving him up your rest of season rankings?
No, because it was never a Miller problem. It was never him, like not even Trubisky. Like when Trubisky targets Anthony Miller, he's been really good with his targets. And it never was a problem with that. It's a problem with Anthony Miller actually being on the field. In week 2, he ran, I think it was just 22 routes. Yeah. I'm going to go back and look at this, but the Bears aren't always in 3 wide receiver sets, so it's going to be difficult. Darnell Mooney was running almost as many snaps as Anthony Miller. So that's the part where I worry about him. Like if,
yep.
And I do think that it's probably going to be Nick Foles, because if Trubisky was benched after the 1 interception he threw, he wasn't playing any worse than he typically does. Like he was this season so far to this point, he had played up and down, up and down. It's just so inconsistent. Yeah. I think that's what the Bears are looking for, just a little bit more consistency.
Well, I'm going to thank Trubisky because I was watching the game with my son, Will, and he saw him and he was like, Dad, that guy's running. And he's like looking around and there's like nobody around him. And he's like, where is everybody on that 40-yard run or whatever? He spent the rest of the afternoon just running up and down the crowd like that. So way to go, Mitch. Way to pull something out of your butt. Okay. For the Falcons, no Julio Jones coming in. Russell Gage also leaves early with a concussion. Calvin Ridley, 13 targets, only catches 5 of them, 110 yards. He was out at the 1 on that one, really long play in the beginning. And Hayden Hurst does get the 1-yard touchdown catch, but that's the only catch that he gets for the game. Todd Gurley, 14 carries, 80 yards, and a touchdown. And Brian Hill also gets a touchdown. Kind of hard to have too many takeaways here, Tags. I mean, Calvin Ridley, to me, I assume to you, is basically a top 5 wide receiver going forward. And it's good to see Gurley have a nice game on the ground, but I'm not really sure there's much else to discuss.
Yeah, sell Todd Gurley. That's my advice. I don't even know if he's the best running back on his team anymore. And it's sad because like there was some golden days there in LA, but now it's like you watch him and he's a shell. I mean, he looks like a 30-year-old running back.
So when you say sell high, what does that mean? Because you had him ranked 20th coming in. I had him 21st. That's probably where I still have him. Like he's not the big thing for me. He's not factoring into all in the passing game. That's a huge, huge negative for a team that's going to throw the ball a ton. 2 targets, 1 catch, 2 yards through the air. He has 3 yards receiving. So for me, though, he still is, because he is going to get that volume. He is a guy who, for the most part, is going to be locked into a high teen, low 20s touches per week. So for me, he's still like in the 20s, like about a 20 for rest of season running back rankings.
I'm at 25 now.
I moved him down.
I did move him down because it's like now we've seen 2 games in a row where he's just not being used in the passing game. Okay. And that's a real problem, as you mentioned. And on top of that, Brian Hill on the run that he had today, I thought it was more impressive than Gurley, than he ran all day. I'm not going to say Brian Hill's better than Gurley, but the gap is closer. And clearly the Falcons have started to see that. 14 carries to 9 carries for Brian Hill. They've been talking up Brian Hill, saying they want to get him more involved. So if you can sell Todd Gurley, like if you could buy Joe Mixon right now, which by the way, people are panicking. They want to drop Joe Mixon.
You know what? Let's go right into this game, because that is the next game on it. And Joe Mixon is first guy on the list. 21, Bengals 21, Eagles 21. Yep. So talk to me about Joe Mixon. We talked about how bad the offensive line is. 17 carries for 49 yards, 3 targets, 2 catches, 16 yards. They do have the Jaguars next. Talk to fantasy managers right now who are freaking out if they're rostering Joe Mixon.
Well, if you were to rewind to last year, you would know that Joe Mixon was also a buy low then. And Joe Mixon finishes a top 6 running back over the second half of the last season. This team, they're trying to, it's almost like they're dropping back to pass just because they have Joe Burrow there. And to be fair, Andy Dalton had so much opportunity under Zach Taylor last year. Like they threw the ball a lot. They throw the ball in neutral game scripts all the time. I figured they would ease Joe Burrow along, but I think it's just taken them time to figure this out. And again, as Joe Burrow progresses in his career, defenses are going to have to respect him. Now he has 5 touchdown passes in the last 2 games. I think people are going to start to take notice of who Joe Burrow is. He's got over 300 passing yards in each of those games as well. So lanes are going to start to open up for Joe Mixon. He is a 3-down running back. It's similar to a Josh Jacobs situation, where it's like you have a team, the Raiders, who traditionally have struggled, and Josh Jacobs doesn't get as many targets as he deserves in the passing game, but these guys do get 3, 4, 5 targets per game. They're getting, like Joe Mixon, 17 carries today against a tough Philadelphia Eagles front 4. So it wasn't a great matchup, but the touches are there. And again, we know Joe Mixon is uber talented. We know that Joe Burrow is only going to get better. So buy Joe Mixon. If you can, I work on this like buy, sell, hold thing. And Joe Mixon, if you can trade him now, or if you can get him now for someone like James Robinson or Todd Gurley, I would be doing that right now.
Yeah, I'm going to have Gurley for sure. Robinson, I'm going to have him, and I do the trade chart. I'm going to have Mixon. I'm almost positive still ranked ahead of James Robinson, but that's not a crazy like. Look at me, cashed in on this deal. If you get Mixon for Robinson, I prefer Mixon, and I do think better days are ahead. But it is something where I mean, it's not Josh Jacobs. The offensive line is not the same as it is in Las Vegas. So it is something where I'm a little more worried than you are. And I hope that, like they did at the end of last year for the second half of last year, they're like, oh, look at this. Joe Mixon is great. I do think you make a really good point that defenses are going to have to start saying, oh, goodness, they're just throwing the ball. We need to really respect the pass a little bit more, open up some more running lanes. But let's talk about the passing game for a second. Tyler Boyd, 13 targets, 10 catches, 125 yards. You mentioned AJ Green, Tags. We talked about Higgins already. 6 targets, 5 catches, 36 yards. I guarantee you we are going to get a million questions on Twitter this week. Can I drop AJ Green? I assume you're just like, no, I get it. Been the weird start, got a lot of targets, didn't get a lot of receptions. Now he had Slay. You're okay with AJ Green? Or are you worried going forward?
AJ Green looked better this week. I know
He
the
did.
results. I know the results don't show it on paper, but from that game, I'm going to go back and watch it again because there's some players I really do go back and watch a second time because I want to see. And I said that AJ Green didn't look good in week 2.
Yep.
The 10 days rest in between those games obviously did him good. He's still probably working back into game shape, but it was against Darius Slay. This was a tough matchup. I said he was a borderline wide receiver 3 this week. Like if you didn't have to start him, you probably shouldn't. It was almost like Corey Davis type range where I had him this week. I think I had him at wide receiver 31 or 32. So I wasn't high on AJ Green this week, but watch from what I saw, AJ Green looked a lot more fluid, a lot better, and I expect better days to come.
I think that that's absolutely true. I watched the game pretty closely, and he last week, I thought maybe he got a little banged up on that first non-catch, right? That first play, and that he just looked slower going, in that game, even though he got a ton of targets. He didn't get the targets, didn't have that much production, but I agree with you that just watching him, he looked healthier. For me, I agree with you. I am still not ready to get rid of AJ Green or sell him low. I'm just holding if I have him because I do think better days are ahead. For the Eagles, Carson Wentz looks broken, but then he winds up with a decent fantasy day. He runs for 65 yards in the score, 225 yards through the air, and a touchdown. He does throw 2 picks. You've got Dallas Goedert, who injures his ankle and is probably going to be out for a few weeks from the early word. He does not have any pass catchers. He has offensive line problems. Are you dropping Carson Wentz if you're rostering him?
Yeah, I don't think you need to. I think he's a streaming quarterback now. You'll
Okay.
play in good matchups, and this was a good matchup to be fair. And
Yep.
he didn't really do a whole lot. The fact that this offensive line is dinged up as it is, it's really messing with Carson Wentz. And you mentioned in the chat today, you're like, what's happened to Carson Wentz? And that's the only thing that I can find. Alshon Jeffrey's been in and out of the lineup throughout his career. Like it is what it is at this point.
Yep.
He's actually probably going to come back this week. So if he's on your waiver wire, you might want to take a look at him. But losing Dallas Goedert early in the game didn't help. But again, this really comes down to that offensive line because Carson Wentz, a guy that wants to sit back there and pat the ball. He doesn't really respond that well to pressure around him. And that's what's leading to these sacks, these fumbles, these interceptions. So I do think he's droppable, unfortunately, because he's been one of the more consistent fantasy quarterbacks over the last 3 years. But it just looks like a different team right now, even including Miles Sanders, who should have smashed in this game. He was considered chalk in DFS lineups, and it was a bust performance when all things considered.
Yeah, I had Wentz 17th coming into the week. I'm probably dropping him for the rest of the season just because he just, there's no reason to. There are so many quarterbacks out there that you can easily stream any given week or anything like that. So I'm more than willing to move on. Anything else on the Eagles tags? I mean, Ertz's 10 targets, 7 catches, 70 yards, but I just felt like it was a weird game when they lost Goddard and the offensive line wasn't good. Other than the fact that they should have used Miles Sanders more.
Yeah, they definitely should have. No, I would just say pay attention to Alshon Jeffrey because with Jalen Reagor out, Deshaun Jackson's never been he's never
he got
been the
banged
alpha.
up in this game too, right?
He did, but he's like I think he's fine. But he's never been the alpha. He's never been asked to be that guy, and he never should be asked to be that guy. He's more of a real life football weapon than he is a fantasy option, like a target hog. Yep. So if Alshon Jeffrey comes back, I think he walks into fantasy relevance just because automatically.
Yeah. Tags, Browns 34, Washington 20. I think we've kind of hit on everything for Cleveland. You let me know if not. Nick Chubb, awesome, 108 yards and 2 touchdowns. We talked about Kareem Hunt. We talked about Odell Beckham Jr. Anything else on the Browns, or you want to go straight to Washington?
No, I think we're getting to the point with Jarvis Landry. You have to wonder if to drop him. I mean, I don't think you should, but I mean, it's pretty ugly with Jarvis Landry right now.
Where do you have him out of curiosity, Tags? Let me look up where we had him coming in. Uh,
I keep moving him down.
yeah.
Right now he's moved down to wide receiver 41.
Yep.
And again, that's not
Yep.
droppable territory, but it's me getting actually like worried about his production because there's just not a whole lot of targets to go around, and he's never been a high yards per target receiver.
Yep.
He's always relied upon volume. So yeah, I'm definitely worried.
Yeah, you had him 37. I'm 38 coming into the week. Like you, I will be dropping him a few spots. I agree. I have no problem dropping him. Like, and I'm very much in that mode this year. Tags. Like guys, you're like Evan Ingram. Oh man,
Drop
I don't
him.
know. I'm like, no, just move on. Done. Let's go. We've got fantasy championships to win. Like we can with Washington if we only rostered Dontrell Inman, who had 2 touchdown passes, helping no one. Terry McLaurin, 8 targets, 4 catches, 83 yards. Antonio Gibson, 9 carries, 49 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. 3 targets, catches all of them, only 11 yards through the air. Logan Thomas does see his 7 targets. That's good. But again, 4 catches, 31 yards. You're still starting Terry McLaurin every week. You start Antonio Gibson as a pretty strong flex, maybe borderline RB2 with all
Getting
the injuries.
closer.
And then you bench everybody else.
I would say that's fair. Definitely fair. I mean, Logan Thomas is like in a pinch. You could play him because he's going to get targets, but Dwayne Haskins is not playing very well.
No good. We'll sign him for the Jets next year. Bills 35, Rams 32. That is what I like to see in a football game. Bills up huge early, Rams come roaring back. Bills get a gift.
Oh, that was so bad.
Late.
That was unfair. I mean, the Rams fans, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
You guys were screwed. I'm sorry. That was bad.
But let's talk about Josh Allen. 311 yards passing, tops the 300 yards again. 4 touchdowns. He runs for 1 just for a good measure. You doubted the volume last week, Tags. You doubted that he was going to throw for this many yards. Are you still doubting it?
No.
You're in now.
No, I was like, this is the first real test. And I mean, he played like an MVP candidate. He's not the MVP. Russell Wilson is. And for those who want to argue with me on that one, I mean, bring it. If you're running an NFL team and you want Josh Allen over Russell Wilson, I mean, that's on you. I'll be the better GM, but he's playing awesome. And I need to give him credit because I have been like one of the biggest, like I pushed against Josh Allen when he was coming into the league because he had some serious accuracy issues. And it's something we don't see quarterbacks fix very often. It's just like, that's who they are and they have to build around their strengths. But I mean, they surrounded him with better wide receivers. Stephon Diggs, that acquisition, clearly. I mean, to go from a guy that didn't throw for 266 yards in a single game over the course of his career for the first 2 years, and now 3 straight games over 310 yards, it's like, dude, like, and like the way he's navigating the pocket, I don't know how you defend it. Like, it's almost going back to when Mike Vick came back into the league. And I remember because Michael Vick was always the mobile quarterback who, with his arm, is so unpredictable. You never knew what you were going to get with him. Cam Newton, similar, right? But when those guys are on, when they're throwing the ball, they are legitimately unstoppable. And Josh Allen is getting close to that territory. He's not Mike Vick. He's not Cam Newton, but he's close. Like in terms of like defenses and how you prepare and how you contain them, it's impossible when he's completing passes like he is. So good on Josh Allen. Like that's all you can ask is your young quarterback that he continues to improve, and he's done nothing but improve over the course of his career.
And don't forget, John Brown injured his calf in this game and was out for most of this game. He didn't even care. It doesn't matter. All your tight ends get touchdowns. Tyler Kroft, right? Tyler Kroft gets 2. Lee Smith gets 1. Stephon Diggs catches 1, but he really caught like 3 because 2 other ones got called back. So Diggs is playing great. And we have loved Diggs as a player. Just as a pure player, as a route runner, we have loved him. We have lauded him for years. So it's great to see. Devin Singletary does not find the end zone, which again, for the Bills running backs, might be part of a problem, especially without Zach Moss. But again, no Zach Moss, totals 121 yards, not all that disappointed. So let's go on here to the Rams. Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods both get into the end zone, which was good. I mean, it wasn't a great matchup, especially for Robert Woods. So it was nice to see him get into the end zone. Darrell Henderson, 20 carries, 114 yards and a touchdown plus a catch. Malcolm Brown, 7 carries for 19 yards. We said this in both with Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson on the waiver wire show, which is we don't necessarily know whether or not these guys are going to be, you know that Sean McVay wants the committee, but if you have another game like you had the previous week, then we might be seeing something. So how are you viewing Darrell Henderson now after back-to-back weeks with big games?
Love him. If you've watched the Rams the last 2 weeks, he is the best running back on that team. And it's not even that close. Like he has ran like a man on a mission. And I love seeing that, right? Like Ronald Jones looked like that guy in week 1. He hasn't really looked like that. He didn't look like that running back today from what I saw. But Darrell Henderson is running like he knows that he could lose that job. He also knows that he could win that job because Sean McVay has said continually, we're just going to ride the hot hand.
Yep.
He is the hot hand right now. And if he continues to play at the level he is, he could be a league winner.
Yeah.
I've actually moved him up in my running back rankings quite significantly after this game. I think I put him all the way up to RB 26 or 27.
Okay.
So I'm getting there with him. I really am, just because of the potential upside that you're getting. And the running backs that are in that territory, they're like unsexy. Like, I don't think Leonard Fournette is ever going to be the 3-down workhorse that they're going to give him 20 plus touches a game. I don't see it. So I would rather take a shot on Darrell Henderson as a guy who might be getting those 20 touches per game. And Dan, your face, that was hilarious. Your face was just stuck on like a Woody thing. And I hope the live stream was able to see that, because I'm like watching the YouTube thing. Yes, it got stuck on there. I think your face was so Woody-esque there. You froze up for a minute.
Am I still stuck on it? Because I did just get a message that said my internet is unstable for whatever reason.
No, you're good now. I can see you moving now, but you're good.
Good. I'm very glad. I don't mind. I'll be stuck in a Woody mode. It's fine.
It was
embarrassing myself on live sort of, YouTube live streams is kind of what I do now at this point. My kids are already in bed. Otherwise they'd pop on. Colts 36, Jets 7, in a football season of massive uncertainty. This was the laughing stock that we all just actually expected and that we all deserved. Not sure there's much to gather here. Tags. Colts could have done pretty much whatever they wanted. Rivers barely.
They pulled him in like the beginning, like the end of the third, beginning of the fourth or something.
The game was over after like the third play, man. Rivers threw 21 times. Molly Cox got the touchdown. T.Y. Hilton led the way, with 52 yards receiving. Very briefly though, Tags. Jonathan Taylor, 13 for 59 on the ground with a touchdown, but you were not impressed. We were messaging. You were not impressed with the way he ran.
I really wasn't. I mean, I was watching that game because like it's weird when like there's some guys in the industry that I respect a lot, and some of the guys had Jonathan Taylor ranked as their number 1 or number 2 running back this week, and I didn't get it. I mean, I feel like he's a Nick Chubb type running back but it's such a small sample size that we have to go off of, right? In Minnesota, we can't pretend that they're the same defense as they were. The Jets are a good run defense, but what I saw from Taylor today, I saw him not creating. I saw him running into the back of his offensive line and just putting his back there and just standing there and just waiting to get tackled, where it's like there was a cutback lane that I saw multiple times that he could have hit. And it's like, I was waiting for it to happen because like I don't know. It was really odd. But if you go back and you watch that game, if you're able to have Game Pass or anything like that, if you're able to go back and watch that, I urge you to watch Jonathan Taylor's carries, because I just really wasn't impressed in terms of what he created. That offensive line is going to create room for him, and I think he's going to be absolutely fine. But from a pure talent standpoint, he did not impress me today.
I would add that this moves the needle not one iota for me, because this has just all the feelings of a like, you know what, this game's over, man. This game's over from the word go. I don't care that much. Nobody cares. I'm not kidding. I legitimately think that it's like, all right, whatever, just run, just so they could get 3 yards, get 4 yards. And his YPC wasn't bad or anything like that. So That's honestly, it's almost like disinterest, which I can't criticize, because I was disinterested and I'm a fan of the Jets, where Braxton Berrios scored a touchdown. Can we just say, bench all Jets, fire Adam Gase, and we can move on? Is that fair?
When is that going to happen? Him and Dan Quinn. I mean, those guys got to go.
After Thursday, they're going to have him coach against Denver, because I've got the Thursday night game. Everybody tune in. Yeah. Broncos, terrible. Jets, amazing.
Guys, we don't have professional football until Sunday, so be ready for that.
Too mean. But after Thursday is when I think Gase gets fired, because I think it's too short a week to do it now. Panthers 21, Chargers 16. For the Panthers, I mean, we talked about the receivers. No receiver really did anything. Robbie Anderson has the most targets with 6. DJ Moore has the most yards with 65. But it really is Mike Davis here in a game that they were expected to lose, but they win. 13 carries for 46 yards on the ground. 9 targets, 8 catches, 45 yards, and a touchdown through the air. And that was the thing with Mike Davis. That was why I was pushing him and why I was teasing Yates, who was like, I don't know, no Mike Davis, whatever. This is why he's going to be involved in the air and everything like that. Christian McCaffrey is on IR. Hopefully he's back after another, I guess, in 3 weeks from now. Mm-hmm. How are you valuing Mike Davis for the next few games, at least?
This was a tough matchup. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of Mike Davis this week. I felt like he was going to be a fine replacement for, the 4 to 6 weeks or whatever they're calling Christian McCaffrey's injury.
Yep.
Against the Chargers, it was an impressive performance, and it's now back-to-back games that he's caught 8 balls. Like Christian McCaffrey wasn't even involved this much in the passing game, so I don't know what the hell's happening. But clearly Mike Davis has that role locked up, and that's a very valuable one in fantasy football because most leagues have moved to PPR, or at least some form of PPR, where they're getting points per reception. So Mike Davis, I think it's fair to say after seeing his workload today and getting 13 of the 15 carries out of that backfield between the running backs, I'm going to say he's going to be a low end RB2 for me. Maybe even if you're in a full PPR format, maybe even a solid RB2.
Yeah, he was a guy who I kept like slowly inching down my rankings for this week because I just kept saying, oh God,
game script was going to be bad, but
that's the thing. Game script was going to be bad. It just was one of the things where I knew he'd factor into the passing game, but are they really just going to give him this 20 touch role? Yeah, they are. And they did. So he absolutely should be valued like that for as long as he's in as an RB2. On the other side of the ball, it's not all that pretty, but there is fantasy production. Keenan Allen sees 19 targets, 13 catches, 136 yards, and a touchdown. Mike Williams does injure his hamstring here, which may have factored into it. Austin Eckler, 12 for 59 and a touchdown, plus 11 targets, 11 catches for 84 yards. Disappointing day for Joshua Kelly. 8 carries for 43 yards. He also loses a fumble. So what's the takeaway here from the Chargers, if any?
I mean, this is something I didn't build into my range of outcomes when it came to the Chargers losing this game. I didn't think that there was any way they were going to lose at home to the Panthers. Yeah, really didn't think so. And that's why I had Joshua Kelly ranked as he ended up at my RB20 or RB21 on the week. So that's definitely a swing and a miss from me because basically projected game script is wrong. So if the Chargers can't beat the Panthers, I don't know if we could ever start Joshua Kelly confidently and say, hey, they're going to win this game.
Right.
If they can't beat the Panthers.
Good.
I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't want to get too excited about what we saw last week because, again, when you have a quarterback who comes in literally at the coin toss, then I think you don't really have your game plan mapped out. So I didn't necessarily think, of course, it was a great matchup for the running back. So I was like, okay, well, maybe the running backs will get a million yards. I also had Kelly, I think at 25th or something like that. It was hard to ignore the matchup, but it's certainly disappointing and takes the shine off a little bit. Let's go to the Lions 26, Cardinals 23.
Oh, by the way, Dan, real quick before we move on to that game, what do you think of Keenan Allen moving forward? Justin Herbert, if he remains the starter, if Tyrod Taylor's not coming back, 19 targets. Last week, he was the leader in target getter. Like, is he like a borderline wide receiver 1?
I think my guess is when I update my rankings, he's not going to be quite there, but I had him 25th. So did you actually coming in. My guess is he's going to be like around 16th because I do think that this is just this is what is happening. This is something that now we can't ignore given this, especially if Mike Williams and has a serious injury, but I'm looking at him probably around 16th tags. What about you? Are you moving higher than that?
I am up at 19 now, and I can make a case for him to go higher, but I don't want to move him ahead of guys like Diggs or DJ Moore, who's coming off a bad game. But I could see the case to move him ahead of those guys. I really can.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take like a close look at this upcoming schedule for the remaining schedule and everything like that. But for now, yeah, I do think that because I with as long as Herbert is in there, which is going to be at least I'm sure another week. We talked to Dr. Chow, at least another week, probably another 2 weeks. Then that certainly boosts the stock. Let's go to Lions 26, Cardinals 23. Matt Stafford throws 2 touchdown passes here, one to Jesse James, one to Kenny Galladay, who makes a fairly successful return, 7 targets, 6 catches, 57 yards, and the score tags. Adrian Peterson gets 22 carries and rushes for 75 yards. DeAndre Swift does not have a single carry. He has 2 targets, 1 catch for 19 yards. Talk to me about the running game here.
It's gross. I mean, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why you drafted DeAndre Swift, to be honest with you. Yep. Matt Patricia's I would say he's the next coach to get fired, but they beat the Cardinals today. So nobody wants me to hear me say that. They're a terrible team. Yeah. They're not one you want to associate with. You're never going to want to start Adrian Peterson. You're not going to do that confidently because DeAndre Swift got goal line carries in week 1. Kerryon Johnson got him in week 2. Adrian Peterson didn't score in week 3. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't even understand what's happening here. I thought DeAndre Swift was going to build a role as the year went on. And I felt like this week he was actually like a guy you consider as a flex because this game had a high over under. Yep. You figured the negative game script would probably play into it because the Cardinals were pretty big favorites in this game. So all that stuff led me to like Swift more and more as the week got on. And I played him some in some DFS lineups, but this is it's a backfield to avoid.
I'm right there with you. Let me ask you about Marvin Jones very quickly. 3 targets. And again, they came at the end because at halftime he had 1 target and 1 catch for 11 yards. Mm-hmm. Catches all 3 for 51 yards. Are you still rostering Marvin Jones? Is he just a guy at this point?
Seems like it. Even with Galladay out, he was just a guy.
Yeah.
And now that Galladay's back in the lineup, he's going to have games where he kind of go off. Like you always want to roster him on Thanksgiving because he's always going to score 2 touchdowns or
That's
3.
right. Correct. Regardless of the matchup, he will score 2 touchdowns on
That's
Thanksgiving.
just what Marvin Jones does.
Correct.
But we might be at the end for Marvin Jones. He's a bigger receiver. He's over 30. This is the final year in his contract with the Lions, so I don't know if that's playing into his mind or what. But 3 targets in a game where, again, Stafford only threw the ball 31 times, but even with Galladay out, it just he's a bye week replacement right now.
All right, for the Cardinals, Kyler Murray accounts for 3 touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. DeAndre Hopkins, 12 targets, 10 catches, 137 yards. Talks about Kenyon Drake as being somewhat disappointing, 18 carries, 73 yards. Again, we thought that the game script was going to be a little different. Andy Isabella filling in for Christian Kirk, really getting a bigger role, catches all 4 of his targets for 47 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think that's the guy really who you look at this matchup, unless you want to talk about something else, and you think, what can Andy Isabella be going forward? And if Christian Kirk is healthy, is Isabella sort of forgotten?
Yeah, he's probably going to be forgotten. This team does run 4 wide receiver sets at points, but it did help. It helps that Isabella was running the slot, and then they just had him run a corner route, and the ball was just it was a perfectly thrown ball by Kyler Murray on this touchdown, the first one, anyways. But Kyler Murray, he had a rough day.
Yeah.
3 interceptions. There probably should have been a 4th one in there. If you were to look at Twitter, you would think that he's the greatest quarterback of all time, but they lost to the Lions, guys. Like this is game planning 101. Like how do you attack the Lions? You run the ball. Kenyon Drake had such a disappointing day. 18 carries for 73 yards. It's nothing great from him, but at the same time, it's all about the game plan and what they came in to do. And it's to see Kyler Murray, throw 35 times. I don't know. Cliff Kingsbury, I'm kind of moving on from him in terms of like Kyler Murray can be a playmaker, but that doesn't mean he's going to run a great offense.
All right, let's move on to the Bucks 28, Broncos 10. Chris Godwin leaves with sounded like a likely hamstring strain. Yeah. I don't know. Stinks. Yep. He did catch a touchdown pass early on 5 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown, but probably assume he's going to miss some time with the soft tissue injury. Mike Evans doing his receiver version of Jordan Howard, 2 catches, 2 yards, 2 touchdowns. So good for you, Mike Evans. I don't really know. Rob Gronkowski does get more involved. 7 targets, 6 catches, 48 yards, which was kind of weird. You do win this running back, both the process and the results here, Tags. I did think it was going to be Leonard Fournette. He gets just 7 carries, 15 yards, 2 catches for 7 yards. Ronald Jones, 13 for 53 on the ground, plus 4 targets, 2 catches, 20 yards. Talk about the running game. How are you viewing it going forward?
Gross. No, this is the worst nightmare is that you can't trust either of any given week because again, Ronald Jones, he fumbles the ball, he's pulled immediately. He misses a blitz pickup, he's pulled immediately. Right. And it's like Leonard Fournette, if Ronald Jones doesn't screw up, we're looking at a 7-touch game or 9-touch game with his 2 receptions, but it's gross. It's like I feel like it's Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones all over again. And it's the same coach and it's the same backfield and they're mixing in LaShawn McCoy in the passing game for whatever reason. So, it's pretty gross, but I will say that if Chris Godwin misses time with a hamstring injury, Mike Evans, going back to last week, Mike Evans, when I started digging into the primer, he ran a lot of his routes from the slot, and that's something that Mike Evans never does. So it goes to show just how important that role is with Brady under center. They need that slot receiver, so they move Mike Evans there. Mike Evans typically plays in the slot like 10 to 12% of the time, but he played there, I think, half the time in week 2. So if he moves back, that's massive for his potential because Mike Evans never gets to play there.
All right, let's go on to the uglier side of this game, and that's the Broncos with 10 points. As we were getting on to record, I was like, wait, what happened to Jeff Driscoll? Yep. What's going on? And Brett Rippon comes in, who is Mark Rippon's son, right? You broke that news to me. Well done. Just a terrible game for the Broncos. You knew that Melvin Gordon would have trouble finding running room, 8 carries for 26 yards, but they just couldn't get anything going. Leading receiver is Judy for 5 catches for 55 yards. They get the Jets. Hooray. Are you starting any Denver Bronco against the Jets?
I mean, I guess Jerry Judy's someone that you can consider, but I don't think I'm excited about it. The Jets' top cornerback is probably Brian Poole. He covers the slot. So that's where Jerry Judy's been playing a majority of the snaps. I need to go back and look at it. I'm going to be honest. I did not watch a whole lot of this game. Like this was like the last in terms of my priority when it came to the afternoon games on the monitors. So I am going to go back and watch this one to see where Judy played because with Cortland Sutton out, I wondered if he was going to start moving to the perimeter a little bit more. So I need to go back and watch.
Okay, then let's go to our final game. I mean, which had craziness happen after we started recording and I missed it. Seahawks 38, Cowboys 31. The big one is that it does sound like Chris Carson may have suffered a serious injury at the end of the game. We will talk about that tomorrow on the waiver wire show. So listen, I don't want to speculate or anything like that because we are going to cover it then. But let's talk about everything else that is absolutely incredible. Russell Wilson, 315 yards and 5 touchdowns. Just kind of silly, throwing 22 rushing yards for good measure. Both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf go over 100 yards. Well, Tyler Lockett actually 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. DK Metcalf, 4 catches, 110 yards, 1 touchdown. Should have been 2 had he not been kind of, jogging into the end zone and got a poke out. Great play by the Ravens. I know. Bad job right there. But I mean, I don't know, Tags, putting aside the running game and whatever we'll say, if Chris Carson is out, just do they have 2 wide receiver ones and a top 3 quarterback? Yep. Is that all we could say about Seattle?
I moved them both into my top 12 wide receivers. I have DK at 11. I have Tyler Lockett at 12. You can make the case for either or. I like DK and what I've seen from him. Again, that stat line would have looked even better had he not, done the Deshaun Jackson showboating and gotten the ball knocked out of his hand at the 1 yard line. But Russell Wilson, I mean, he came into this game with 9 passing touchdowns and 11 incompletions on the year. And now he leaves this game with, 14 passing touchdowns and like 24 incompletions on the year, which is just stupid. The guy is playing lights out at an MVP level. They're letting him pass the ball. And this is basically, you see the Seahawks 3-0 right now. Their defense is not good. I think everyone in the league knows that, but the fact that they've unleashed Russell Wilson is like, that's not good for every other NFL team, because this dude has been held in check for so long by the coaching staff that if they've actually like let him work, the sky's the limit.
This is awesome. This is so great to see. It really is, just because we've all been screaming for it forever, right? Stop doing the run the ball 3 yards, run the ball 3 yards. Okay, wait till we're down by 11 points in the fourth quarter and then let Russ cook. This is amazing. And I love to see it. And the 2 wide receivers, they're both wide receiver ones going forward. Go ahead, get involved. We may, assuming Julio Jones is healthy, I mean, 4 of the top 12 wide receivers may reside on 2 teams, the Falcons, which will be amazing. I love it. I love crazy 2020 fantasy football. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the other side. Dak Prescott doesn't actually have a good game, but it's a good fantasy game. I mean, 472 yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Zeke held in check here, doesn't do all that much, but he does find the end zone at least. Michael Gallup, Tags, we were recording, you were like, who was that? Who was Michael Gallup winds up with a long touchdown catch, 138 yards with the touchdown, which is great to see. Cedric Wilson, I guess 2 touchdown passes, 107 yards. Amari Cooper, 11 targets, 9 catches, 86 yards. CeeDee Lamb, 8 targets, 5 catches, 65 yards. Not sure how much there is to say about it. I mean, it's good to see Gallup get involved here. I've been a little worried because I thought that the injuries to the offensive line were sort of preventing him from getting deep, but it's really good to see Gallup get involved here. But any takeaways here from the Dallas side of the ball?
Well, it helps that the Seahawks can't generate any pressure because their front 7 is terrible. But it's a little worrisome to see Cedric Wilson see 7 targets, because this was already a passing group. Like the receiving group, Amari was going to get his. Gallup only had 10 targets through 2 games. And then CeeDee Lamb has been, like, I don't want to say limited, but in terms of like, what was his ceiling? Because he was the number 3 option or number 2, whatever. And now you add another guy into this. I don't even know where Cedric Wilson, like his snaps even came from. Like, was this team running 4 wide receiver sets against the Seahawks? I don't know. These are things that we have to go back and watch, but this is going to be an up and down. And this all comes back to the idea of like, when you have all these different pancakes, it's like you go back to, Dak Prescott and you say, I want the syrup that's going to go over the top of all of them. It's the same thing with Russell Wilson, only his are more concentrated to 2 wide receivers. So CeeDee Lamb, with the hype he's gotten, he was ranked as like a top 24 consensus wide receiver this week. And I really was like, I think that might be a little bit high. I could see it against Seattle, because they've allowed, after today's game, I'm guessing it's going to be 9 top 36 wide receivers that they've allowed through 3 games. So, but would you be selling CeeDee Lamb right now based on the hype that everybody kind of has surrounded him with?
I mean, I think the bottom line is that I will sell anyone if I can get more than their actual value is.
Where do you value him right now?
What'd you say?
Where do you value him right now?
I had him 37th coming in. I think he's probably about there for me. You had him a little lower. You had him 41st. So are you keeping him where you have him, Tags?
I have him at 38 right now.
Okay, yeah, I think he's probably going to wind up exactly at 37th. If somebody I mean, I don't think this is the game to do it because he doesn't have a huge game here. But yeah, it is something where everybody's been like, ooh, I want CeeDee Lamb instead of Michael Gallup. I don't think so. I don't think it's ever gotten to that point. The gap was narrowing, but it is something where if people are really excited because they see Dak threw for almost 500 yards and they just want a piece of it, then great. But in the end, I'd be fine to roll him out there as a borderline wide receiver 3. But if I can get higher than that, then I would. And that's it. How about that? Good job, Tags. Good show. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. If you're watching our live stream, thank you very much. Sorry for freezing in the Woody sort of persona right there. I'll try to do it again next time. Again, so if you didn't watch, you can watch it tomorrow. If you want, subscribe, youtube.com/FantasyPros. We'll be back breaking down everything, including, the potential ramifications of Chris Carson's knee injury, which looked pretty serious. But we'll talk about all that on our waiver wire show tomorrow, and we'll talk to you then.